Scarlet Winter moved through the smoky haze of the Howling Moon bar with a practiced, weary grace. She refilled a glass, wiped down a sticky patch of countertop, and ignored the leering eyes of a rogue werewolf who was 3 beers past civilized. This was her third job, the one that paid the bills the library and the diner couldn't quite cover. It was also the most dangerous. The air was thick with the scent of unwashed fur, testosterone, and simmering aggression, a cocktail that would send any sane person running. But Scarlet wasn't just any person. She was a lie. Wrapped in a cheap apron and protected by a daily dose of scent blocker that tasted like chalk and desperation, it masked the telltale scent of werewolf, allowing her to move among these rogues, these packless wanderers, as a fragile human, an easy target, but an unnoticed one. "Hey!" "Red," the rogue slurred, his hand shooting out to grab her wrist. Another round. Scarlet didn't flinch. 5 years of this had burned the flinch right out of her. "Coming right up," she said, her voice flat. She pulled her arm free with a firm, practiced twist. His grip was strong, but her resolve was stronger. 5 years. It felt like a lifetime since she'd had a name other than outcast or cursed, a lifetime since the night of the blood moon when her world had shattered. The memory was always there, lurking just behind her eyes, the cold sting of the air, the ring of hostile wolves surrounding her, their growls of physical force. She was 18, barely an adult, her first shift still a terrifying, agonizing memory. Alpha Marcus Thorne, his face a mask of cold judgment, stood before her. "Scarlet Winter!" His voice boomed across the clearing, laced with an authority that made her bones ache. 3 pack members are dead. 3 deaths since your change. You were born under a blood moon. You carry a curse. Her foster mother, Diane, had tried to step forward, her face pale with fear. "Marcus, please, she's just a child. It was an accident, a sickness." "Silence," Marcus snapped, and Diane flinched back as if struck. He hadn't protected her. No one had. The rogue's impatient grunt pulled her back to the present. She slammed 3 more beers onto the counter. "Here." As she turned away, a strange, disorienting wave of dizziness washed over her. It had been happening more frequently lately, always accompanied by a dream. The same dream, night after night. A woman with hair like spun silver, standing under a moon so bright it hurt to look at. The woman didn't speak in words. She howled, a long melodic sound that resonated deep in Scarlet's soul. And in the dream, a single phrase would echo in her mind, clear as a bell, "Find the silver grove." She shook her head, trying to clear it. It was just stress, lack of sleep. That's what she told herself. But then she caught her reflection in the mirror behind the bar and her breath hitched. For a fleeting second, under the dim bar lights, her skin seemed to glow with a faint, silvery luminescence. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through her carefully constructed calm. She dropped the rag she was holding and muttered to the owner, "Need a break. Stockroom." She practically ran, bursting through the swinging doors into the cool, dark storeroom. She leaned against a stack of crates, her heart hammering against her ribs. She held her hands up. The glow was gone. Had she imagined it? Was she losing her mind? The front door of the bar chimed, a sound she usually ignored, but this time, the entire atmosphere of the place shifted. The low hum of aggression and drunken chatter died down to a tense, wary silence. A presence had entered the bar, an authority that dwarfed even the arrogance of the rogues. Curiosity warred with her panic. She cracked the stockroom door open just enough to see. 2 men stood there, framed by the doorway. They were impossibilities of scale and stillness. The one in front was immense, at least 6'4", with broad shoulders that strained the fabric of his dark jacket. His hair was the color of jet, and even from this distance, she could see his eyes. They weren't brown or blue, they were a piercing. Hypnotic amber, like a wolf's, an alpha. There was no mistaking the raw power that rolled off him in waves. The man beside him, his beta, was nearly as tall but leaner, with a more relaxed stance that still hummed with coiled energy. The alpha's gaze swept the room, and every wolf, rogue or not, instinctively lowered their eyes in submission. Then his head turned, his amber eyes zeroing in on the stockroom door with unnerving precision. He couldn't see her. He shouldn't be able to smell her. And yet, it felt like he was looking right through the wood, right into her soul. He took a slow, deliberate sniff of the air. A flicker of confusion crossed his stoic face. It was as if he'd smelled something impossible, something that didn't belong. The scent of moonlight and frost. Scarlett's blood ran cold. She let the door swing shut, her back pressing hard against the shelves. She had to get out of here, now. She waited until she heard the low murmur of their voices, the alpha asking the bar owner a question, before she slipped out the back delivery door and into the biting December wind. She didn't look back. She just ran, her boots crunching on the frosted asphalt of the alley. An hour later, when she finally reached her tiny rented apartment on the edge of town, her exhaustion was a heavy cloak. She fumbled for her keys, her fingers numb with cold, and pushed the door open, and froze. The single window in her living room was shattered, glass littering the worn floorboards. A frigid wind swirled through the room, lifting the corners of the papers on her small desk. Someone had been here. Her drawers were pulled out, their contents spilled. Her mattress was askew. They had been searching for something. Her eyes landed on a piece of paper stabbed into the wall with a kitchen knife. The words were written in a sharp, jagged script. Knox Ashford stood in the sterile silence of his study, the scent of old leather and power filling the air. The faint, impossible scent from the bar moonlight and frost still clung to the back of his mind, a puzzle he couldn't solve. It was a scent of purity, of wildness, utterly at odds with the grimy bar and the cheap chemical scent blocker that had tried, and failed, to conceal it. His beta, Jackson, stood by the window, his arms crossed. She was gone before we could even ask her name, ran like the hounds of hell were on her tail. They might be, Knox murmured, his gaze fixed on a framed photograph on his desk. It was the only personal item in the room, a man with his same amber eyes, and a woman with a gentle smile, his parents. The memory was 10 years old, but it was as sharp as broken glass. He had been 19, strong but not yet the alpha he was today. The attack came at night, swift and brutal, not a pack war, but an assassination. When he finally fought his way to his father's office, it was too late. His parents lay slain, and on the wall, painted in their blood, was a symbol of full moon, cracked in half. That symbol had haunted him. It had driven him. His father, the previous alpha of Shadowmere, had been a historian, a keeper of werewolf lore. He had been obsessed with the lunar bloodline the royal line of wolves said to be extinct. Anything Jackson asked, pulling Knox from the past. Maybe. Knox opened a locked drawer and pulled out a faded, leather-bound journal, his father's. He flipped to a dog-eared page. 25 years ago, the Lunar Massacre. The entire royal pack, the Silver Crest pack, was wiped out in a single night. The official story was a rogue uprising. My father never believed it. He tapped a line of text. He believed there was a survivor, a child, the Alpha's daughter. She would be 23 now. Jackson's eyes widened, the same age as the girl in the bar. Exactly, Knox said, his voice a low growl. My father was an ally of the Lunar Alpha. I think his murder was tied to what he knew. And I think this girl, she's the key. He closed the journal. You have your orders. Jackson, find her. Watch her. Don't let her know she's being watched. I need to know everything about her. Scarlett felt eyes on her all the next day. a prickling sensation at the back of her neck that made her jump at every shadow, at her second job, shelving books in the hushed quiet of the Pine Hollow Library. The feeling was almost unbearable. The dreams, the glowing skin, the break-in, it was all connected. And it all started with that name whispered in her mind, the Silver Grove. Using the library's archivist privileges, one of the few perks of the low-paying job, she slipped into the restricted section. The air smelled of dust and decaying paper. She ran her fingers along the spines of ancient books until she found one titled Fables of the First Wolves. She pulled it down, the leather cracking in her hands. Tucked inside was a smaller, handmade journal, its pages brittle with age. It spoke of a forgotten ritual, of a wolf who did not just draw power from the moon, but could sing to it, command it. A moon singer. A floorboard creaked behind her. Scarlet spun around, her heart leaping into her throat. The book fell from her hands, landing with a soft thud on the dusty floor. Leaning against a bookshelf, as if he'd been there all along, was the alpha from the bar. Up close, he was even more intimidating. He wasn't just tall, he was built with a dense, predatory power that seemed to suck the very air out of the small aisle. His amber eyes, flecked with gold, held an unnerving intelligence. He wasn't looking at her with aggression, but with an intensity that felt far more dangerous. "Sorry," he said, his voice a low, smooth rumble that vibrated through the floorboards. "Didn't mean to startle you." Scarlet's wolf, the part of her she kept caged and starved, stirred for the first time in years. It recognized him. It recognized his power, his authority. And it wanted to submit. The instinct was so strong, she had to physically lock her knees to keep from bowing her head. "Can I help you?" she managed, her voice tight. He pushed off the shelf and took a step closer. The scent of pine needles and cold mountain air clung to him. "I was looking for something on local werewolf history." His eyes flickered down to the book at her feet, then back to her face. "Looks like you beat me to it." He bent down in one fluid motion and picked up the journal. Instead of handing it back, he skimmed the page she'd been reading. A subtle shift in his expression told her he recognized the words. "Moon singer," he read aloud, his voice soft. "Just a myth." "So they say," Scarlet replied, snatching the book from his hand. The brief touch of his fingers against hers sent a jolt, like static electricity, up her arm. A slow smile touched his lips, transforming his harsh features into something devastatingly handsome. "I'm Knox Ashford." "Scarlet," she said, not offering her last name. "Scarlet," he repeated, the name sounding different in his mouth, deeper, more significant. "I was going to get some coffee. The diner across the street. Join me." It wasn't a question. It was a calm, quiet command from an alpha used to being obeyed. Every instinct screamed at her to say no, to run. But another, deeper part of her, the wolf she denied, was curious and tired of running. "Fine," she heard herself say, "but I only have 30 minutes. At the diner, the tension between them was a third person at the table. It was thick and electric. He moved with a predatory stillness, his eyes never leaving her as he asked gentle, probing questions. "Have you lived in Pine Hollow long?" he asked, stirring his black coffee. "Long enough," she deflected. "Family nearby." A pang of loss hit her. Diane, her foster mother who had found her, raised her, but ultimately couldn't save her. "No, I'm alone." "I'm sorry to hear that," he said. And for a moment, she thought he actually meant it. "Do you remember much before you came here?" The question caught her off guard. No, not really, nothing before I was 5. Diane, my mother, she said she found me, wandering in the woods. The words tasted like ash. It was a story she'd never told anyone. Knox's expression became unreadable, but his amber eyes burned with an intensity that made her skin prickle. He knew something, or he suspected something. That night, Sleep offered no escape. The dream came again, more vivid than ever before. The silver-haired woman stood on a cliff overlooking a forest of silver-barked trees, the Silver Grove. She turned, her face a heartbreaking mix of love and sorrow. And this time, she spoke. "Your name was Luna," the woman's voice echoed, not in her ears, but in her very soul. "They took everything. My child, but they couldn't take your song." Scarlet woke with a gasp, the name Luna, a ghost on her lips, and for the second time, she saw it. Her hands, resting on the thin blanket, were bathed in a soft, ethereal silver light that pulsed in time with her frantic heartbeat. The third job was the worst, a greasy spoon diner that catered to truckers and the night owls of Pine Hollow. Scarlet was mopping the sticky floors just before 2 a.m., the scent of stale coffee and fried onions clinging to her clothes. The moon was a sliver in the sky, a pale, curved blade that offered little light. Her shift ended, and she stepped out into the frigid night air. Her apartment was a 15-minute walk, a path she'd taken 1,000 times. But tonight, the shadows seemed deeper, the silence more menacing. The feeling of being watched was back, stronger than ever. She clutched the strap of her bag, her knuckles white. She was halfway down a deserted side street when she heard it, the soft crunch of footsteps on gravel behind her. Not one set, but several. She quickened her pace, her heart starting to pound a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The footsteps matched her speed, growing closer. She broke into a run. An alleyway appeared on her right, a potential shortcut, a mistake. The moment she ducked into the darkness, her path was blocked. A hulking figure stepped out from behind a dumpster, a low growl rumbling in his chest. 2 more emerged from the shadows behind her, cutting off her escape. 4 of them, rogues, but not like the drunks at the bar. These were different. Their eyes glowed with a feral, unnatural red light, and they moved with a coordinated, predatory purpose. They weren't just looking for trouble, they were hunting. Well, what do we have here?" the leader sneered, his lips curling back to reveal yellowed canines. Scarlet backed away, her body tense. "I don't have any money." The rogue laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "We don't want your money, little bird." He took a slow, deliberate sniff of the air. "The alpha wants her alive." He growled to his companions, his red eyes fixed on Scarlet, the one with the silver eyes. Panic seized her. They knew what she was. The scent blocker had failed, or they had a way of seeing past it. The first one lunged. Instinct, raw and primal, took over. Scarlet dodged, her body moving with a speed she didn't know she possessed. She slammed her elbow into his throat, and he staggered back, choking. But the others were on her in an instant. A hand grabbed her hair, yanking her head back. Claws tore through her jacket, ripping into the flesh of her side. Pain, white-hot and blinding, exploded through her. Her mind screamed she was going to die here, in this filthy alley, at the hands of monsters. The fear, the pain, the desperation, it was a pressure cooker, building and building until something inside her snapped. A power she had suppressed for 5 long years erupted. Her bones cracked and reformed in a symphony of agony and release. But this wasn't the clumsy, terrifying transformation she remembered. This was different, faster, sleeker. Her vision sharpened, the darkness of the alley resolving into perfect clarity. Her senses exploded, flooded with the stench of garbage, the metallic tang of her own blood, and the foul scent of her attackers. She was a wolf, but not like them. Her fur, she could somehow sense, was not the dull brown or gray of a common werewolf. It shimmered, even in the faint moonlight, with an undercoat of pure silver. She was smaller than them, but her muscles were coiled springs of tightly wound power. One of the rogues hesitated, his red eyes widening at the sight of her. What is that?" Before he could react, and sound tore from Scarlett's throat. It wasn't a growl or a snarl, it was a howl, but it was melodic, a series of rising and falling notes that hung in the frozen air like a song of pain and defiance. The effect was instantaneous. The rogues flinched back, whining, their paws coming up to cover their ears as if the sound was a physical blow. They were disoriented, stunned. The reprieve was short-lived. The leader shook his head, his eyes burning with renewed fury. "Get her!" He charged, and Scarlett knew she couldn't hold them off for long. She was injured, outnumbered. Suddenly, a blur of motion exploded from the mouth of the alley. A massive, pitch-black wolf slammed into the rogue leader, sending him flying into a brick wall with a sickening crunch. The wolf was a creature of nightmare and legend, its fur the color of a starless night, its eyes burning like twin amber coals. Knox. Two more wolves, a gray and a tawny brown, followed him in, engaging the other rogues with lethal precision. It was Jackson and another warrior. They moved as a unit, a perfect, deadly team. Knox was a whirlwind of controlled violence. His movements were fluid, powerful, each snap of his massive jaws and swipe of his claws executed with devastating efficiency. He was protecting her. He was shielding her injured body with his own. The fight was over in minutes. Two of the red-eyed rogues lay dead. The other two scrambled away, vanishing into the night. The adrenaline faded, and the pain in Scarlett's side returned with a vengeance. The world began to spin, the edges of her vision turning dark. She stumbled, her wolf form wavering. Before she could fall, Knox shifted back to his human form with a speed that seemed impossible. He was there in an instant, catching her as her own body reverted. His bare skin was hot against hers where her jacket had been torn away. "Scarlett." His voice was a low, urgent rumble. He looked down at the wound in her side, then at his hand, which had pressed against the skin to stanch the bleeding. His hand came away glowing. A soft silver light was pulsing from her skin where he touched her, weaving with the golden aura of his own alpha power. His amber eyes widened, a storm of emotions crossing his face, shock, confirmation, and something else, something fiercely protective. "It's true," he whispered, more to himself than to her. The darkness was closing in. The last thing Scarlett saw before she lost consciousness was Knox's face, his expression grim and resolute as he carefully lifted her into his arms. "Jackson," he commanded, his voice ringing with absolute authority, "we're taking her to Shadowmere." Scarlett woke to the scent of antiseptic herbs and clean, soft linen. For a moment, she was disoriented, her mind foggy. Then the memories of the alley, the red-eyed wolves, and the searing pain rushed back. She sat up with a gasp, her hand flying to her side. The skin was smooth and unbroken. There was no wound, not even a scar. She wasn't in her cramped, shabby apartment. She was in a large, luxurious bedroom, furnished with dark, polished wood and rich, deep blue fabrics. A fire crackled softly in a stone hearth across the room. The door opened and a woman with kind eyes and graying hair entered, carrying a tray. She wore a doctor's coat. "Easy now. You took a nasty hit." "Where am I?" Scarlett asked, her voice raspy. How is my side healed?" "You're at Shadowmere Estate. I'm Dr. Evelyn, the pack physician," the woman said gently. "And you, my dear, have a healing rate that rivals an alpha's. We cleaned and stitched the wound, but your own body did most of the work. Astonishing, really." Shadowmere Estate. The name sent a tremor of apprehension through her. This was Knox Ashford's home, his territory. She was in the heart of the most powerful pack in the region, a gilded cage. Over the next few hours, she met the inner circle. Jackson, Knox's beta, brought her a change of clothes, his easygoing smile a stark contrast to his lethal wolf form. Sienna, the pack's gamma and lead warrior, observed her with cool, appraising eyes, her stance radiating a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. Then there was Elder Magnus, a man so old his face was a roadmap of wrinkles. He looked at her not as a threat or a puzzle, but as something he recognized from a long-forgotten story. His gaze was heavy with knowledge. The whispers followed her as she was given a tour of the main house. An outsider, the rogue from the bar. I heard she was born on a blood moon, a curse. It was Riverbend all over again, just with more expensive furniture. The familiar sting of rejection made her clench her fists. She demanded to see Knox. She found him in a vast study lined with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. He stood by a large window, staring out at the snow-covered grounds, a mug of coffee steaming in his hands. He turned as she entered, his amber eyes pinning her in place. "Why am I here?" she asked, her voice sharper than she intended. "Why did you save me?" He set his mug down, his movements slow and deliberate, because those rogues weren't a random attack. "Scarlet, someone is hunting you. Someone who knows what you are." He gestured to a chair. "Until I find out who that is and why they want you, you are safer here than anywhere else on the continent." "Safer," she scoffed. "I'm a prisoner." "You are a guest," he corrected, his voice calm but firm. "Under my protection. I'm offering you sanctuary, food, shelter, safety. I'll even have my best warriors train you, teach you to defend yourself. All I ask in return is that you help me understand what's happening, this power you have, the silver light, the way you healed. I need to know what it is." It was a tempting offer, an infuriatingly tempting offer. A part of her, the part that had been running for 5 years, was exhausted. It yearned for a moment of peace, a place to feel safe, but trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. "And what if I say no?" she challenged. His gaze softened slightly. "Then you are free to walk out that door, but they will find you again, Scarlet. And next time, I might not be there to stop them." Knox watched her leave the study, a storm of conflict raging within him, bringing an outsider into the pack, especially one as powerful and mysterious as Scarlet, was a massive risk. His pack council had made that abundantly clear. "You're inviting danger to our doorstep," Alpha, one of the council members, had argued during a heated meeting earlier. "She's a bad omen. We should turn her out." Only Elder Magnus had supported him. "You don't see it, do you?" Magnus had said, his ancient eyes fixed on Knox. "That silver in her fur, that light. I have seen it once before, 25 years ago, in the lunar pack, just before they were all killed." The words had sent a chill down Knox's spine. His suspicions were solidifying into a terrifying certainty. As if on cue, his phone buzzed. It was a call from one of his border sentries. He answered, his voice tight. "What is it?" "Alpha." The sentry's voice was tense. "We have a message from Alpha Marcus Thorne of the Riverbend Pack." Knox's knuckles turned white. Marcus, Scarlet's former Alpha. "He knows she's here," the sentry continued. "He says she's a fugitive, a cursed member of his pack. He considers her his property. He's demanding you return her, immediately." A cold, hard fury settled in Knox's chest. Marcus didn't care about some cursed outcast. He wanted Scarlet for another reason, the same reason the rogues did. He knew what she was. "Tell Alpha Marcus," Knox said, his voice dropping to a deadly low growl, "that Scarlet Winter is under the protection of the Shadowmere Pack. If he wants her, he can try to take her." He hung up the phone. The line had been drawn. This was no longer just about protecting a mysterious girl. It was an act of defiance, an invitation to war. He had just bet the safety of his entire pack on a woman he barely knew, a woman whose touch felt like coming home. The first week at Shadowmere was a blur of exhaustion and aching muscles. Scarlet threw herself into training with a desperate, single-minded focus. It was better than sitting in her room, drowning in questions with no answers. Jackson taught her strategy. His easygoing nature masking a brilliant tactical mind, Sienna, initially hostile, became a grudgingly respectful instructor in hand-to-hand combat. She pushed Scarlet relentlessly, but for the first time, Scarlet had an outlet for the frustration that had simmered inside her for years. She was clumsy at first, unused to pack dynamics, her lone wolf instincts fighting against the concept of teamwork, but she was a fast learner. Then came the full moon. A nervous energy buzzed through the estate. For Scarlet, it was a feeling she'd always dreaded. It meant locking herself away, fighting the agonizing pull of the change. But Knox had other plans. He found her in the library, staring out the window at the rising moon, a giant, luminous pearl in the indigo sky. "Come with me," he said. It wasn't a request. He led her deep into the woods that bordered the estate, to a wide, circular clearing bathed in ethereal moonlight. The air was cold and still. "Tonight, we're not going to fight it," he told her, his voice a low rumble. "We're going to embrace it. I need to see what you can do. I need to understand your limits." Fear warred with a strange, exhilarating curiosity. She had never willingly shifted under a full moon. She had never had anyone there to guide her, only to condemn her. She looked at Knox, at the steady confidence in his amber eyes, and nodded. The change came on, fast and hard, a fire racing through her veins. But this time, with Knox's calm presence beside her, the panic didn't take hold. She didn't fight the pain. She flowed with it. When the transformation was complete, she stood on 4 paws, panting, the world a kaleidoscope of new sights and smells. She looked down at her paws, at the fur on her legs. It was breathtaking, a coat of pure, spun silver that seemed to capture and amplify the moonlight, making her glow from within. A low, appreciative growl sounded beside her. Knox had shifted, too. His wolf form was even more magnificent than she'd imagined, a colossal black wolf, a living shadow with eyes of molten gold. He was the embodiment of power and authority. He nudged her gently with his massive head, a silent command, "Run with me." And so they ran. It was glorious. It was freedom. They raced through the forest, a blur of silver and shadow. She had never felt so fast, so agile. Her smaller, sleeker form was no match for his raw power, but she moved with a grace that left him a step behind. It wasn't a race. It was a dance. For the first time, she felt a connection to her wolf, to the moon, to the primal joy of the hunt. And to him, with every stride, a strange, invisible cord seemed to weave between them, a sense of shared spirit, of understanding that went beyond words. They burst back into the clearing, their breath pluming in the cold air. The moon was directly overhead, bathing them in its brilliant light, an energy, potent and overwhelming, surged through Scarlet. It felt like the moonlight itself was pouring into her, filling her up until she thought she would burst. An instinct she didn't know she possessed took over. She threw her head back and howled. The sound that emerged was unlike any howl she had ever heard. It was a song, a clear, piercing melody that soared into the night sky, filled with a power that vibrated in the very air. The forest fell silent. Every cricket, every rustling leaf, every nocturnal creature stopped. And then, a moment later, from the deepest parts of the woods, they answered. The howls of the Shadowmere pack rose in unison, joining her song. Then the coyotes, the wild wolves, all the creatures of the night, lifted their voices in a single, harmonious chorus. She was conducting an orchestra of the wild. She felt Knox at her side, his power surging, his presence, his wolf, felt amplified, doubled, as if her song was feeding his own alpha strength. He looked at her, his golden eyes wide with awe. The song ended. The energy receded, leaving her utterly drained. Her legs buckled, and the world went soft and blurry. The transformation reversed, leaving her human, naked, and trembling in the cold. Before she could hit the ground, Knox was there. He had shifted back, his human form radiating an intense heat. He swept her into his arms, wrapping his jacket around her shivering body. He held her close, his chin resting on top of her head. "It's okay," he murmured, his voice thick with an emotion she couldn't name. "I've got you." She was too exhausted to fight, too overwhelmed to protest. She sagged against his solid chest, the steady beat of his heart a comforting rhythm in her ear. He smelled of pine and night and a clean, masculine scent that was uniquely his. She felt safe, utterly and completely safe. As he carried her back toward the estate, he knew the invisible cord between them, the way his soul responded to her song, the overwhelming, primal need to protect her at all costs. It wasn't just an alpha's duty. It was the nascent stirrings of a mate bond, a sacred, unbreakable connection he hadn't dared hope to find. He couldn't tell her, not yet. She was terrified, broken, and just beginning to trust him. Revealing the truth of the bond now would feel like another cage, another destiny forced upon her. When they reached the house, Elder Magnus was waiting on the porch, his ancient eyes knowing. "Alpha," he said, his gaze falling on the exhausted woman in Knox's arms. "Magnus," Knox replied, his voice low. "You were right." The old wolf nodded gravely. "It is as I feared, and as I hoped. She is not just of the lunar bloodline. Knox, she is the heir, the last moon singer." His eyes, filled with a deep ancestral worry, met Knox's, and if Marcus Thorne discovers what she truly is, he will burn this world to the ground to possess her power. The truth was buried deep beneath the Shadowmere estate, in a climate-controlled vault that smelled of old secrets and aging paper. Knox led Magnus down the stone steps, the air growing colder with each footfall. This was the Pack's archives, a repository of 1,000 years of werewolf history. "My father spent the last years of his life down here," Knox said, his voice echoing in the chamber. "He was searching for something." "He was searching for her," Magnus corrected softly. They moved to a locked cabinet labeled Silvercrest. Knox produced a key and opened it. Inside were meticulously organized files on the lunar massacre. He pulled out a thick folio. 25 years ago. A blood moon. Just like the one Scarlet was born under, Knox murmured, spreading the documents across a large oak table. There were official reports. Witness testimonies all painting the picture of a chaotic rogue uprising that got out of hand. And then he saw it. A small, slightly blurry photograph tucked into a side pocket. It showed the lunar alpha, a handsome man named Nathaniel Silvercrest, and his Luna, Seraphina. Cradled in her arms was a small child, no more than 3 years old, with a shock of unmistakable reddish-pink hair and wide, serious gray eyes. Her name was written on the back, Luna Silvercrest. Knox's breath caught in his throat. It was Scarlet. The resemblance was uncanny. He scanned the report again. The child, Luna, was listed as missing, presumed deceased. "Look," Magnus said, his gnarled finger pointing to the child's neck in the photo. There was a small, dark mark, barely visible, a birthmark, shaped like a tiny crescent moon. Knox's mind raced back to the alley, to the moment he had held Scarlet in his arms. As he had wrapped his jacket around her, he had seen it for a fleeting second at the nape of her neck, the same crescent moon. The final piece of the puzzle lay at the bottom of the folio, a sealed envelope, addressed to Knox's father. It was postmarked 18 years ago. The handwriting was feminine, shaky. He broke the seal. The letter was from Diane Winter, Scarlet's foster mother. "Alpha Ashford," it began. "You don't know me, but I was once a healer for the Silvercrest Pack on the night of the massacre. I fled with the child. I found her hidden in a secret nursery, alive. I've kept her safe all these years, raised her as my own under a new name. But Marcus Thorne, our new alpha at Riverbend, is growing suspicious. He watches her too closely. I fear he knows. I beg you. If anything should happen to me, protect her. Her real name is Luna." Knox stared at the letter, the words blurring. Scarlet Winter didn't exist. She was Luna Silvercrest, the lost heir of a murdered royal family, and Diane had died trying to protect her secret. Scarlet screamed herself awake. The dream had been more vivid, more real than ever. It wasn't a dream, it was a memory. She was small, so small, wrapped in her mother's arms. The world outside was fire and chaos. The smell of smoke and blood filled the air. Her mother, Seraphina, was running through a burning forest, her silver hair catching the hellish light of the flames. "Remember the song, Luna," her mother whispered, her voice choked with tears and frantic with terror. "Sing to the moon, my love, and she will always protect you." A dark shape loomed before them, a roar, her mother's scream, then blood, so much blood, and then a suffocating, terrifying darkness. She sat bolt upright in her bed, gasping for air, her body trembling. The room was aglow with a frantic, pulsing silver light radiating from her own skin. The door burst open and Knox was there, his hair disheveled, wearing only a pair of sweatpants. He must have heard her scream. He took in the scene, her terrified expression, the pulsating light, and was at her side in an instant. "Scarlet, it was just a dream," he said, his voice a low, soothing balm. He reached for her, and for the first time, she didn't pull away. When his arms went around her, she collapsed against him, burying her face in his bare chest, her tears soaking his skin. He held her, his hand stroking her hair, whispering calming words until her trembling subsided. The silver light gradually faded, soothed by his presence. "It wasn't a dream," she whispered against his chest, her voice muffled. "It was a memory. She called me Luna." Knox's arms tightened around her. He pulled back slightly, his amber eyes searching her face. "Scarlet," he said, his voice heavy. "There's something you need to see." He led her down to the vault. He laid the photograph on the table, next to Diane's letter. Scarlet stared at the image of the smiling family, her eyes fixed on the woman with the silver hair, the woman from her dreams, her mother. Her hand went to the back of her neck, her fingers tracing the crescent moon birthmark she had always tried to hide. "My name," she whispered, her voice breaking. "My name is Luna." The world tilted on its axis. Her entire life, everything she thought she knew, was a lie. Scarlet Winter was a ghost, a name created to hide the last survivor of a massacre. Diane hadn't just found her, she had saved her, and had spent 20 years lying to protect her. The weight of it all was suffocating. She was the heir to a bloodline she knew nothing about, hunted by the monsters who had murdered her family. She wasn't just an outcast, she was a target. Knox reached for her, his expression full of a deep, aching sympathy. "Scarlet, Luna, I'm so sorry." She recoiled, stumbling backward. "Don't." She couldn't breathe, she couldn't think. The truth was a physical weight, crushing her. She turned and ran from the vault, from the pictures, from the ghost of a life that wasn't hers. She needed to be alone. She needed to figure out who she was, now that Scarlet Winter was dead. Knox watched her run, a hollow ache spreading through his chest, the mate bond, now a constant, thrumming connection between them, transmitted her pain directly to him. It was a maelstrom of confusion, grief, and betrayal. He wanted nothing more than to go after her, to hold her until the broken pieces of her world settled. But he was an alpha first, and his pack was in danger. He met with his counsel in the war room, the atmosphere thick with tension. He had laid out all the evidence, the photograph, Diane's letter, Marcus Thorne's sudden and aggressive interest in Scarlet. "So she's royalty," Sienna said, her arms crossed. "That explains the power. It also puts a target the size of this continent on her back and on ours." "Marcus won't stop," Jackson added, his jaw tight. "He's not the type to make idle threats. He wants her, and he'll go through us to get her." "Then we should give her to him." A council elder named Rowan stated bluntly. The room fell silent. "Our primary duty is to the Shadowmere Pack. Harboring the last lunar heir invites a war we may not win. It is a needless risk." A cold rage, sharp and absolute, rose in Knox. He slammed his hand down on the table, the wood groaning in protest. "No," he growled, his voice dropping to a register that left no room for argument. The full force of his alpha authority flooded the room, making the air crackle. Every member of the council, even Rowan, instinctively lowered their gaze. "Her name is Luna Silvercrest," Knox stated, his voice ringing with conviction. "Her family were allies to this pack. Her foster mother died protecting her. We will not be the ones to hand her over to her family's murderers. She is under my protection. She is one of us now. Anyone who wishes to harm her will have to answer to me. Is that understood?" Silence. Then, one by one, they nodded. "Yes, Alpha." His duty was clear, but beneath the Alpha's resolve, another instinct screamed louder, the primal, possessive need of a wolf for its mate. He would protect her, not just because it was the right thing to do, but because the thought of her being harmed was a physical agony. She was his to protect. Later that night, as he tried and failed to focus on pack logistics, a call came through on his private line. The caller ID was blocked. He answered. "Knox Ashford, so noble, so foolish." The voice was slick with arrogance. "Marcus Thorne." "Marcus," Knox said, his voice deceptively calm. "To what do I owe the displeasure?" "Cut the crap." "Ashford," Marcus snarled. "I know you have her. That cursed little stray belongs to Riverbend. I want her back." "She's not a piece of property, Marcus, and she's not going anywhere." A low, humorless laugh echoed down the line. "You think you're protecting her? You have no idea what she's capable of. A power like that shouldn't be wasted on a weak, pathetic outcast. That power belongs to the strongest." The line went dead. Knox stared at the phone, the pieces clicking into place. Marcus didn't just know she was a lunar heir. He knew about the Moon Singer. He wasn't trying to reclaim pack property. He was trying to acquire a living weapon. And he wasn't afraid of starting a war to get it. Knox walked to the window, looking out into the moonlit night. He could feel Scarlet out there somewhere on the estate grounds, her emotional turmoil a faint, painful echo in his own heart. He had made a choice. He had placed his pack, his life, and his heart on the line for her now. He had to prove to her that he was worthy of her trust. He had to show her that not all packs, not all alphas, were like the ones who had hurt her. He made a silent vow to the moon, to the memory of his parents, and to the woman who was rapidly becoming the center of his world. "I will find the truth. I will protect you. I will not fail." The shock of her true identity didn't break Scarlet. It forged her. After 2 days of seclusion, walking the snow-covered grounds of the estate until her feet were numb, she emerged with a new, steely resolve in her silver eyes. She was done being a victim. She was done running. She was Luna Silvercrest, and she would fight for the life that had been stolen from her. She found Knox in the training yard. "I'm ready," she said, her voice clear and strong. "Teach me everything." The training intensified. She learned to fight not just as a lone wolf, but as part of a pack. Sienna's drills were brutal, but Scarlet met every challenge head-on, her reflexes seeming to come from a deep, instinctual place rather than learned memory. Jackson taught her tactics, how to read an opponent, how to use the terrain to her advantage. And Knox taught her how to lead. He put her in charge of a small hunting party, a test of her authority. The pack members were skeptical at first, wary of taking orders from an outsider. But Scarlet, drawing on an inner strength she didn't know she possessed, led them with quiet confidence. She didn't command, she coordinated. She listened to their instincts, trusted their skills, and guided them to a successful hunt. When they returned, the way the pack looked at her had changed. There was a new respect in their eyes. Sienna even offered her a rare, small smile, not bad. Silvercrest, not bad at all. She was beginning to find her place, a home. One night, under the sliver of a new moon, Nox led her back to the clearing in the woods. Elder Magnus was waiting for them, standing before a flat, moss-covered stone that seemed to pulse with a faint energy. "This is a moon altar," Magnus explained, his voice a reverent whisper, a place of power for the lunar pack. They believed a true moonsinger did not need a full moon to draw upon its power. They could call it forth themselves. Scarlet looked at the dark sky, at the faint crescent of light. It seemed impossible. "Try," Nox encouraged, his voice soft beside her. "Just reach for it, like you did before. Feel the moonlight inside you." Scarlet closed her eyes. She tried to remember the feeling from the night of the full moon, the surge of energy, the song rising in her throat. She focused. She strained. She pleaded with the sliver of light in the sky. Nothing happened. The air remained cold and empty. Frustration and disappointment crashed down on her. A fresh wave of self-doubt washed away the confidence she had so carefully built. "I can't do it," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm not her. I'm not a moon singer. I'm just Scarlet, the outcast. I'm not worthy of this." A warm hand covered hers, Nox's. He stepped in front of her, his large frame blocking out the world. His amber eyes were soft, filled with an understanding that soothed her raw nerves. "Power isn't about bloodline alone." "Scarlet," he said, his voice a low, steady anchor in her storm of emotion. "It's about accepting who you are. And you are not just Luna Silvercrest, the lost heir. You are also Scarlet Winter, the survivor who clawed her way through 5 years of hell, alone, the woman who works 3 jobs to get by, who stands up to rogues, who refuses to break." He lifted his other hand, his thumb gently brushing her cheek. "Both of those parts make you who you are. Both of them make you whole. Both of them make you worthy." His words, his touch, the sincerity in his eyes, they dismantled the walls around her heart, brick by painful brick, for the first time. She wasn't looking at Nox Ashford, the powerful alpha of Shadowmere. She was looking at Nox, a man who saw all of her, the broken parts, the cursed parts, the strong parts, and wasn't afraid. A strange, fluttering warmth spread through her chest, a pull she couldn't explain. It was more than gratitude, more than respect. It was the whisper of something new, something she had been terrified to feel for a very, very long time: hope. The attack came at dawn, a small skirmish at the southern border of Shadowmere territory. A probe, rogues again, with the same soulless, red eyes. They struck at the exact moment of the patrol shift change, a detail only someone with inside knowledge would have. They were repelled easily, but the implication was chilling. "We have a traitor," Nox stated, his voice flat and cold. "In the emergency meeting that followed, someone inside this house is feeding Marcus information." The paranoia was a poison, seeping into the pack. Everyone looked at their neighbor with suspicion. Trust, the bedrock of any pack, was eroding. Scarlet felt the old, familiar isolation creeping back in. Betrayal was a wound she knew all too well. Jackson and Sienna began a quiet, covert investigation. They cross-referenced patrol schedules, monitored communications, and watched. It didn't take long. Their attention fell on Tobias, a mid-level warrior who had been complaining about the outsider since Scarlet arrived. He was spending more money than he earned and making secret trips into the neutral lands. Nox devised a trap. He let a piece of false information slip during a public training session, making sure Tobias was within earshot. Scarlet's power is tied to the ancient groves, he announced. Magnus is taking her to the Silver Grove on the eastern ridge tomorrow night, alone, to attempt the awakening ritual. That evening, Tobias was caught. Jackson and his team intercepted him at the edge of the territory, a burner phone in his hand, a message to Marcus half-typed. The trial was swift and brutal, held in the main hall, with the entire pack as witness. Tobias confessed. Marcus had approached him months ago, long before Nox had even found Scarlet. He had offered money, power, a position in his pack. All Tobias had to do was report on any strange occurrences, any new arrivals. Marcus had known Scarlet was in Pine Hollow. He had been planning this for a long time. "He's not alone," Tobias choked out, his face pale with terror under Nox's furious gaze. Marcus answers to someone else, someone higher. They want her power. They want to control all the packs. Nox's judgment was merciless, delivered in a voice of ice and steel, by the law of the pack, for the crime of high treason. You are stripped of your name and cast out. You are marked a traitor. No pack will ever shelter you. You will walk alone for the rest of your miserable days. Scarlet watched as Tobias was dragged away, the weight of yet another betrayal settling in her heart. First her own pack, now a member of the pack that had taken her in. Was there anywhere she could truly be safe? Later, Nox found her in the library, staring into the fireplace. He didn't say anything at first, just stood beside her, his solid presence a silent comfort. "I'm sorry you had to see that," he said finally. "I'm used to it," she said, her voice hollow, "being betrayed." He turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. His amber eyes were blazing with an emotion that stole her breath. "Not everyone will betray you. Scarlet." He moved one hand up to cup her face, his thumb stroking her cheekbone. "I won't." His words, his touch, the unwavering promise in his eyes, they broke through her fear. And in that moment, she felt it, a clear, undeniable pull in her chest, a golden thread of energy that seemed to stretch from her heart directly to his. It was warm and strong and terrifying in its intensity. The mate bond. It wasn't a myth. It was real. It was here, humming between them. A silent, powerful truth. The realization was so overwhelming, so intimate, that she instinctively took a step back. Breaking the physical contact, the golden thread remained. But the suddenness of the connection had her heart hammering against her ribs. She wasn't ready for this. She couldn't be. Nox saw the fear in her eyes and let his hand drop, a flicker of disappointment in his own gaze. He understood. He would give her time. But the truth was out there now, shimmering in the air between them, a bond that could not be denied. The book was ancient. Its leather cover was worn smooth with centuries of handling, its pages as thin and delicate as a dragonfly's wing. It was called the Lunar Chronicles, and it was the oldest, most sacred text in the Shadowmere archives. Elder Magnus had summoned Scarlet, Nox, Jackson, and Sienna to the deepest part of the vault, to a chamber reserved for the pack's most precious artifacts. He laid the book on a velvet-covered pedestal and carefully opened it to a marked page. The script was archaic, the ink faded, but the words held a palpable power. "There is a prophecy," Magnus said, his voice a low, somber chant, written 500 years ago by the first moon singer. He began to read. "When the blood moon marks the birth of the last heir, the moon singer shall rise with power to bend the lunar tide. She will unite the broken or doom them all. Her song will strengthen the worthy and silence the cursed. Beware those who seek to steal her voice shall bring the eternal night. A heavy silence fell over the chamber. Scarlet felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of the vault. "What does it mean?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Silence the cursed." Magnus looked at her, his ancient eyes filled with a mixture of awe and fear. "It means, child, that you hold a power beyond anything this world has seen in half a millennium. A moonsinger can do more than just borrow the moon's strength. You can command it." He explained, the prophecy foretold that she could, with time and training, learn to control the phases of the moon itself. She could conjure a full moon in the middle of the day, or eclipse it in the dead of night, affecting the power of every single werewolf on the planet. Her song, the melodic howl she had produced in the clearing, could amplify the strength of her allies, healing them, making them faster and stronger. "And the last part," Jackson prompted, his voice tense. "Silence the cursed." "It is the moonsinger's most devastating ability," Magnus said grimly, a howl directed not to strengthen, but to sever. "It can cut a werewolf off from their bond with the moon, permanently stripping them of their ability to shift. It can render them powerless." Scarlet stared at him in horror. The ability to take away the very essence of what made someone a werewolf. It was monstrous. "And the eternal night?" Knox asked, his hand resting on the hilt of a ceremonial knife on the table, as if preparing for a fight. "If an unworthy soul were to steal that power," Magnus explained, his voice dropping, "by killing the moonsinger and using blood magic to absorb her voice, they could plunge the world into a state of perpetual new moon, a moonless sky, forever. It would starve every werewolf of their power, weakening them, making them easy to control or destroy." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Marcus didn't just want to use her, he wanted to kill her. He wanted to consume her power and become a god, a king of a weakened world. The massacre of her family 25 years ago, it must have been his first attempt, but Diane had saved her, and Marcus had lost his prize, until now. The weight of the prophecy, of the danger she represented, was crushing. She was a doomsday clock, a weapon of mass destruction. Knox saw the terror in her eyes. He stepped forward and did something that stunned everyone in the room. He knelt before her on one knee, the traditional posture of a warrior swearing fealty to their alpha. He took her hand, his grasp warm and firm, his amber eyes, blazing with fierce devotion, met hers. "I swear on my alpha blood," he said, his voice ringing with the force of an unbreakable oath. "I will protect you, not because of a prophecy, and not because of your power, but because you are mine to protect." He paused, his voice softening, becoming more intimate. "My mate." He had said it. He had acknowledged the bond between them, laid it bare for all to see. This time, Scarlet didn't pull away. The fear was still there, but beneath it, something else was blooming, a fierce, powerful emotion she could finally name: love. She looked at this incredible man kneeling before her, this powerful alpha who had offered her a home, who had shown her she was worthy, who was willing to defy the world for her. She placed her other hand over his, her fingers intertwining with his. She accepted. The bond between them flared to life, no longer a tentative thread, but a brilliant, blazing cord of gold, sealing their promise, their hearts and their fates, in a cold, dusty vault. Surrounded by the ghosts of the past and the threat of a dark future, Luna Silvercrest, the last moon singer, finally found her anchor. The call for an Alpha Summit was a bold, dangerous move. It was an ancient tradition, reserved for times of great crisis. Knox sent out the summons, calling the 7 most powerful packs in North America to a neutral meeting ground. He was done waiting for Marcus to make the next move. He was taking the fight to him. They gathered in a great lodge in the neutral territory of the Black Hills. The air was thick with power and suspicion. Scarlet stood by Nox's side, her presence causing a ripple of murmurs through the assembled alphas. There was Drake Stone of the Ironwood Pack, a grizzled, powerful alpha, and a staunch ally of Nox's father, Celeste Rivers. The shrewd and graceful alpha of the Wintermoon Pack was the only other woman in the room holding the rank of alpha, and her intelligent eyes missed nothing. Garrett West of Stormfang was a cautious, neutral party, and Victor Hale of the Nightshade Pack watched Nox with open hostility, his ambition a palpable force. And then there was Marcus Thorne. He swaggered into the room, his eyes immediately locking onto Scarlet with a possessive, predatory gleam that made her skin crawl. Nox began, his voice calm and authoritative. He laid out the evidence Scarlet's true identity as Luna Silvercrest, the prophecy of the Moon Singer, and Marcus's attempts to capture her using controlled, red-eyed rogues. Marcus laughed, a sound full of scorn, a fairy tale Ashford is trying to consolidate power. He found this girl and concocted a story to make her a symbol. He wants to use her supposed power to make all of you kneel to him. The room erupted into factions. Drake and Celeste sided with Nox, their expressions grim. Garrett West suggested a compromise. The girl should be placed under the protection of a neutral council of elders to protect both her and us from the temptation of her power. Scarlet couldn't stand it anymore. They were talking about her as if she were a weapon, an object. She stepped forward, her voice ringing out with a clarity and strength that silenced the room. "I am not a weapon to be owned or a prize to be fought over," she declared, her silver eyes sweeping across the faces of the alphas. "I am a person. My family was murdered, and my life was stolen from me. The only pack that has offered me safety, the only alpha who has treated me with honor, is Shadowmere." She turned her gaze to Nox, her voice softening, "And I choose to stand with them. They gave me what my own pack never did a home." Her words hung in the air, a direct challenge. Marcus's face twisted into a mask of fury. He pointed a finger at Nox. "You want to claim her, then prove you are worthy to protect her. I challenge you to an alpha duel. Single combat. Winner takes all. If you win, I walk away. If I win..." His cruel smile widened. "Shadowmere and the girl are mine." The room gasped. An alpha duel was a fight to the death, or to utter submission. It was a barbaric, final resort. "Nox, no!" Scarlet whispered, grabbing his arm. But Nox's eyes were locked on Marcus, a cold, predatory fire burning within them. This wasn't just about Scarlet anymore. It was about honor, about justice for his parents, and about ending this threat once and for all. He gently removed her hand from his arm. "I accept," Nox said, his voice like the toll of a funeral bell. The moment they were back in the private rooms assigned to their pack, Scarlet rounded on him. "Are you insane?" she demanded, her voice shaking with a mixture of fear and fury. "An alpha duel. He'll kill you. Nox, you can't do this." "It's my duty as alpha," he replied, his jaw set. "It's the only way to avoid a full-scale war between our packs. It contains the conflict to just the two of us." "I don't care about the conflict. I care about you," she cried, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "I won't let you die for me." He stepped toward her, his expression softening, the hard lines of the alpha giving way to the man beneath. He reached out, his hands cupping her face. "I'm not fighting just for duty. Scarlet," he said, his voice a low, intense whisper. "I'm fighting because the thought of him laying a hand on you. I can't live in a world where that's a possibility. I can't lose you." He searched her eyes, his own amber gaze raw with emotion. "The mate bond, I felt it for weeks. A pull toward you that's stronger than anything I've ever known. You're everything to me." Tears welled in her eyes. "I feel it too," she admitted, her voice trembling. "But I'm so scared. I'm scared it's just this magical connection forcing us together, that it's not real." Knox shook his head, his thumbs gently wiping away her tears. "The bond doesn't create love, Scarlet. It recognizes what's already there. I was falling for you long before I knew for certain we were mates. I fell for your strength, for your fire, for the way you refused to give up even when the world had given up on you. The bond just made everything feel right. It confirmed what my heart already knew." Her breath hitched. His words were a key, unlocking the final chamber of her guarded heart. This was real. He was real. This feeling, this overwhelming, terrifying, beautiful feeling was real. She leaned in, and he met her halfway. His lips were firm and warm, a stark contrast to the cold fear that had been gripping her. The first touch was gentle, questioning. And then the bond between them erupted. It was like a dam breaking, a supernova of pent-up emotion, connection, and raw, undeniable need. The kiss deepened, becoming hungry, desperate. It was a promise, a vow, a declaration. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her flush against his hard body until there was no space left between them. She threaded her fingers into his dark hair, holding on as if he were the only solid thing in a spinning universe. She could feel his emotions pouring into her through the bond, his fierce love, his unwavering determination, his fear of losing her. And she poured her own back into him, her gratitude, her terror, her blooming, incandescent love. For the first time since she was 3 years old, Scarlet felt completely, utterly, and unconditionally safe. She was home. Later that night, unable to sleep, she found him in the training grounds, going through combat drills alone. He moved with a deadly grace, shifting between his human and wolf forms seamlessly. But she saw the truth. Marcus was bigger, heavier, known for his brute force and dirty tactics. Knox was faster and more skilled, but it would be a brutal fight. "Let me help," she said, stepping into the circle of light. He turned, surprised. "Scarlet, you should be resting. You need a sparring partner who knows how you move, and I need to do something other than pace my room with worry." He hesitated, then nodded. They sparred for hours under the cold moon as they moved together. Something incredible happened. The mate bond, now fully awakened, created a current between them. She could anticipate his moves a split second before he made them. And he seemed to feed off her energy, his movements becoming faster, stronger. When they fought together, they were more than the sum of their parts. They were an unstoppable force. An idea, dangerous and desperate, began to form in Scarlet's mind. She would not be a damsel watching from the sidelines. She was a moon singer, and she would be damned if she let the man she loved fight this battle alone. The neutral ground was an ancient, grim place, a clearing surrounded by colossal pine trees that had witnessed 100 years of treaties and bloodshed. The alphas and their chosen seconds formed a wide circle, their faces tense. A pack of enforcers, drawn from all neutral parties, stood ready to maintain order. Scarlet stood with Jackson and Sienna, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles were white. Every beat of her heart was a drum of dread. Through the bond, she could feel Knox's calm, steely resolve, but underneath it, there was a thrum of lethal anticipation. Knox and Marcus faced each other in the center of the circle, both in human form. Marcus was a beast of a man, his muscles bulging, a cruel sneer on his face. The duel began. It was a clash of styles. Marcus was a berserker, all raw power and furious. Telegraphed blows. Knox was a fighter, fluid and precise, dodging, weaving, using Marcus's own momentum against him. He was faster, more tactical, landing sharp, targeted strikes to Marcus's ribs and joints. But Marcus was relentless. He absorbed the blows, grinning through a split lip. Then, during a grapple, He swiped his hand across Nox's chest. Nox cried out, stumbling back, a series of deep gashes bleeding freely on his torso. Scarlet felt the phantom pain lance through her own body. It wasn't just a normal cut. It burned. "He's using silver Celeste Rivers," yelled from across the circle, her eyes sharp. His nails, he's coated them in silver dust. A gasp went through the crowd. It was a dishonorable, forbidden tactic. Marcus just laughed. "Prove it." The fight devolved. Nox was wounded, the silver poison slowly seeping into his system, sapping his strength, knowing he couldn't win a battle of attrition. He put distance between them and shifted. His magnificent black wolf form burst forth, a low, pained growl rumbling in his chest. Marcus shifted too, transforming into a massive, mangy brown wolf, larger and heavier than Nox. The battle of wolves was primal and terrifying. Claws tore, teeth snapped. Nox was faster, but Marcus was a battering ram. He slammed into Nox again and again, his weight and strength beginning to overwhelm the wounded alpha. Nox went down, his front leg buckling. Marcus loomed over him, jaws open, ready for the killing bite. Scarlet screamed, "No!" She couldn't watch anymore. Jackson tried to hold her back, but she broke free, driven by a desperate, all-consuming love. She ran into the dueling circle. Just as she reached the center, the moon, which had been peeking from behind the clouds, broke free, its full light flooding the clearing at the same time. Marcus decided to drop all pretense. "This is taking too long," he roared, his voice a grotesque mix of human and wolf. "Master, grant me your strength." A vial, black energy swirled around him, emanating from a dark tattoo on his shoulder. He swelled in size, his eyes glowing with that same demonic red light as the rogue's. He was cheating, drawing power from some dark, forbidden source. He lunged for the downed Nox. Time seemed to slow down. Scarlet saw Nox, wounded and vulnerable. She saw the monster that was about to kill the man she loved, and everything inside her, the fear, the love, the dormant power of 1,000 ancestors erupted in a single, desperate act. She threw her head back and howled. But this was the song, the Moonsinger's song. It poured from her, a wave of pure, silver energy that washed over the entire clearing. The moonlight responded, focusing on her in a brilliant, blinding column of light. Her wolf form burst forth, her fur glowing so brightly it was hard to look at, her eyes no longer gray, but pure, molten silver. The effect of her song was instantaneous and absolute. Every member of the Shadowmere pack felt a surge of vitality. Nox's wounds began to stitch themselves closed, the silver poison burning away. His strength returned. Tenfold, he rose to his feet, no longer just an alpha, but an alpha empowered by the moon itself. For Marcus, the effect was the opposite. The pure lunar energy was like acid to his dark magic. The black aura around him dissolved with a shriek. His enhanced strength vanished. The song targeted the curse within him, the source of his dark power, and silenced it. He was forcibly shifted back into his human form, naked and powerless, collapsing to the ground, whimpering. The duel was over. Nox had won. But the battle had just begun, because now, every werewolf in North America had seen exactly what Luna Silvercrest, the last moon singer, could do. A metallic voice, cold and disembodied, echoed from a communication device on Marcus's discarded clothes. "Well done, Moonsinger," it said, the voice laced with a chilling amusement. "You've revealed yourself to the world. The hunt truly begins now." The victory was hollow, overshadowed by the terrifying display of power. While Dr. Evelyn tended to Nox's remaining wounds, which healed at an astonishing rate whenever Scarlet was near, the alphas convened an emergency council. The mood had shifted. Fear and awe had replaced skepticism. "She is who you claimed," Drake Stone said, his voice heavy. "The lunar heir lives, and her power is a danger to us all if it falls into the wrong hands," Victor Hale countered. His eyes narrowed. "She is too powerful to be controlled by a single pack. She must be governed, contained." Contained Celeste Rivers shot back, her voice like ice. "She just saved your precious neutrality. Victor, she is not a thing to be locked away. She is an ally to be protected." Celeste looked at Nox. "Wintermoon formally stands with Shadowmere. We will form an alliance to protect the Moonsinger and hunt down this master Marcus spoke of." Drake slammed his fist on the table in agreement. "Ironwood is with you." A new power block was formed in that moment, the Lunar Alliance. But Victor and the other alphas remained wary, their fear a tangible thing in the room. For Scarlet, the aftermath was a bewildering rush. The power thrummed beneath her skin now, a constant presence. She could feel the moon, even during the day, a silent pull in her soul. She could hear its whispers on the wind. Magnus began to teach her control, showing her ancient breathing techniques and mental exercises to shield herself from the overwhelming sensory input. The power can drive a Moonsinger mad if they do not have an anchor to the mortal world, the old wolf warned her. "What kind of anchor?" Scarlet asked. Magnus's ancient eyes softened. "A true mate bond. Child, Nox is your anchor. His love will keep you grounded. It will keep you whole." That evening, the Shadowmere Pack held a formal ceremony. In the presence of their allies, they officially recognized Scarlet Luna Silvercrest as the Luna of their pack, Nox, his chest now bearing only faint, silvery scars from Marcus's attack, stood before her. He gently tilted her head to the side, exposing the column of her neck. "With this mark," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion for her ears only, "I claim you, my heart, my soul, my wolf, before the moon in our pack. You are mine." He leaned in, and his canines extended slightly. He bit down, not enough to break the skin deeply, but enough to leave a permanent mark over her pulse point. It wasn't painful. It was a jolt of pure energy, a final indelible sealing of their bond. From this moment on, every werewolf would know she was the mate of the Shadowmere Alpha. She was protected. She was claimed. She was loved. Meanwhile, Marcus Thorne had vanished. Before he could be imprisoned, he was spirited away, his escape clearly orchestrated by his mysterious master. All that was left in his room was a note, scrawled on the wall. "This isn't over. Moonsinger. You can run to your precious mate. But when the eternal night comes, you'll all kneel before the true Alpha King." But the most chilling event happened far from them, miles away. In the territory of the Nightshade Pack, Alpha Victor Hale made a clandestine call on a secure line. "She's unlocked her full power," Victor reported, his voice devoid of its earlier hostility, now replaced by a cold deference. "The alliance is formed. Should we proceed with the plan?" A voice on the other end, distorted and ancient, replied with chilling calm, "Not yet. Let them feel safe. Let them build their little alliances and celebrate their small victories. The Moonsinger is strongest when she believes she has won. She is most vulnerable when she is happy." A pause. "That's when we'll take everything from her." Victor Hale stood in a darkened chamber in his own estate. On the wall behind him, a tapestry depicted a large, intricate symbol, a full moon, cracked perfectly in two. 2 months passed. A fragile peace settled over the territories of the Lunar Alliance. Scarlet, no longer just Scarlet, but Luna of Shadowmere, grew into her new role. She sat beside Nox in council meetings, her insight surprisingly sharp. She had spent 5 years observing from the fringes, and she understood the struggles of the packless, the outcasts, in a way no born and bred pack wolf ever could. The alliance thrived under the joint leadership of Nox, Celeste, and Drake. They shared intelligence, coordinated patrols, and created a united front against the whispers of the shadowy organization led by the Master. Scarlett's training with Magnus continued. She learned to control her gifts, to harness the immense power without letting it consume her. She could now create a small, localized mini full moon effect, a shimmer of light in the air that could boost the stamina of warriors during training. She discovered a healing howl, a softer, lower frequency song that could accelerate the mending of minor wounds. It exhausted her, but the feeling of helping, of nurturing her new pack, was a balm to her soul. Her relationship with Nox deepened into a partnership of equals. He was her alpha, her mate, but he was also her best friend. They led together, they fought together, they lived together. The fierce, desperate passion of their first kiss had softened into a steady, burning love that was the foundation of her new life. One evening, they stood on the balcony of their rooms, overlooking the moonlit valley. Nox wordlessly fastened a delicate silver chain around her neck. On it hung an antique silver pendant, shaped like a howling wolf before a crescent moon. "This belonged to my grandmother," he said softly, his arms wrapping around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "She was the Luna of Shadowmere before my mother. Now it's yours, as it should be." Scarlett's fingers traced the cool metal, her heart swelling with an emotion so profound it almost hurt. "It's beautiful. Nox." "Not as beautiful as the woman wearing it," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. Life wasn't all serious meetings and power training. There were moments of levity, of normalcy. Scarlett tried to cook dinner for Nox one night, a disastrous attempt that filled the kitchen with smoke and resulted in Jackson being called in for an emergency pizza delivery. The pack good-naturedly teased that their Luna could face down rogue armies, but was defeated by a pot of pasta. And for the first time, Scarlett laughed along with them, feeling not the sting of ridicule, but the warmth of family. Then came the summons from Victor Hale. During an Alliance video conference, the Nightshade Alpha proposed an idea. The Master's forces are quiet, but they are watching. We need to show them the strength of our unity. I propose a grand gathering, an assembly of all the packs in North America, to be held at Crimson Falls. There, Luna Silvercrest can demonstrate her power, and all packs can swear an oath of allegiance to the Alliance. It will be a show of force they cannot ignore. Celeste was immediately suspicious. Why so public? Victor, why the sudden rush? It feels risky. Fear is their greatest weapon, Victor argued smoothly. We must counter it with hope. When the packs see the power of the Moon Singer and realize we stand united, this Master will lose his hold. He preys on the divided and the weak. We will show him we are neither. The logic was sound. Reluctantly, Nox and Scarlett agreed, though Nox insisted that Shadowmere and Ironwood would handle all security for the event. The decision made. Scarlett felt a new wave of unease that night. She had a new nightmare. It was different from the memories of her mother. She was in a dark, cavernous space, and a pair of brilliant, golden eyes, brighter and more ancient than Nox's, watched her from the shadows. A voice, deep and resonant, echoed in the darkness, a voice that felt strangely, terrifyingly familiar. "Come home, daughter," it whispered. "Come to the place where you truly belong." She woke up in a cold sweat, tangled in her sheets, Nox's arms immediately pulling her into a protective embrace. She told him about the dream, about the unsettling familiarity of the voice. Far away, in his study, Magnus confided a deep worry to Nox over a secure line. "Alpha." The old wolf's voice was grave. "I have been studying the most ancient texts that predate even the lunar chronicles. The legends say the first Moon Singer was not a pure werewolf. She was born of a union between a wolf and something older, a Lycan primordial, creatures of immense power thought to be long extinct." "What are you saying?" Magnus Nox asked. a knot of dread tightening in his stomach. I am saying that there may be more to her bloodline than even the lunar pack knew, that she may be the key to awakening something ancient and terrible, and I fear that this is what our true enemy has been waiting for all along. Crimson Falls was a place of breathtaking, historic beauty, a wide box canyon where a waterfall stained the rocks a permanent, rusty red. Hundreds of years ago, it was where the first treaty between the warring packs was signed. Now, it was the site of the Grand Gathering, and over 500 werewolves from 20 different packs had answered Victor's call. The air hummed with a volatile mix of hope, fear, and raw power. Scarlet stood on a raised dais beside Nox, Drake, and Celeste, looking out at the sea of faces. She felt like an actress in a play she hadn't rehearsed. Nox squeezed her hand. "You don't have to prove anything," he murmured. "Just be yourself." The day began with speeches and formal introductions, when Nox introduced Scarlet as Luna Silvercrest, the last moon singer. A wave of awe and apprehension swept through the crowd. Later, a young brash alpha named Caden from the Red Claw Pack issued a formal challenge not to a duel, but to a test of skill. "We have only heard tales," he declared. "Show us you are worthy of our loyalty." Scarlet accepted before Nox could object. She faced Caden in the sparring circle. He was strong and fast, but she was something else entirely. Her movements were fluid, her instincts honed by Sienna's training and her own supernatural reflexes. She didn't overpower him, she outmaneuvered him, disarming him with an effortless grace that left him stunned and the crowd breathless. Caden bowed his head in respect. "You have earned the loyalty of the Red Claw Pack. Luna." As evening fell, a full moon rose over the canyon walls. Victor Hale stepped forward. "It is time," he announced, "for the moon ritual, a blessing from the moon singer to unite us all." Magnus, who had traveled with them, grabbed Nox's arm. "This is a ritual of immense power. Nox, it will drain her completely. In the old texts, some singers did not survive it." But Scarlet saw the hopeful faces in the crowd. She saw a chance to unite them, to build the future she and Nox had dreamed of. "I have to do this," she told them, her resolve firm. She walked to the center of the clearing, directly under the moon. She closed her eyes, reached for that inner wellspring of power, and began to sing. Her howl, clear and melodic, soared into the night. The moonlight seemed to coalesce around her, a visible river of silver light pouring into her before refracting outwards, blanketing the entire assembly. Every wolf felt it a surge of strength, a cleansing of old pains, a deep primal connection to each other and to her. They lifted their heads and howled with her, their voices joining in a single, powerful chorus of unity. She held the song until the last drop of energy was gone from her body. As the final note faded, she staggered, her vision blurring with exhaustion. Nox was there in a second, catching her, his strong arms a welcome anchor. And in that precise moment of her weakness, the trap was sprung. From the shadows at the canyon's edge, figures emerged, dozens of them, werewolves wearing masks, their eyes glowing with that demonic red light. They moved with military precision, not attacking randomly, but cutting a path directly toward the dais, toward her. "Ambush!" Drake roared. The Alliance warriors moved to intercept, and the canyon erupted into chaos. But this was a betrayal from within. Victor Hale, who had been standing near Nox, suddenly produced a set of heavy chains. They weren't iron, they were silver. He whipped them around Nox with shocking speed, the metal sizzling against the alpha's skin, sapping his strength. "Sorry, Nox," Victor sneered, his face a mask of triumphant cruelty. "But the true Alpha King offers a future your little alliance could only dream of." Scarlet watched in horror as Nox fell to his knees, his power neutralized by the silver. Jackson and Sienna fought desperately to reach her, but they were swarmed by masked attackers. Two of the masked wolves grabbed Scarlett's arms. She was too weak to even attempt to shift. They dragged her toward a helicopter that had descended into a far corner of the canyon, its rotors whipping up a storm of dust, a sharp prick in her neck, a sedative. The world began to fade into a gray, fuzzy numbness. The last thing she saw was Knox, struggling against his silver chains, his face contorted in a mask of helpless rage and agony. He threw his head back and howled her name, a sound of pure, heart-wrenching despair that she felt echoing in the deepest parts of her soul through their bond. Then, a voice boomed from a loudspeaker on the helicopter, a voice that was deep, resonant, and chillingly familiar, the voice from her nightmares. You protected her well, Knox Ashford, but she was never yours to keep. Luna Silvercrest belongs with her true lineage, the primordials. A pause. And I, her true father, have come to reclaim what is mine. Scarlett woke up shivering. Though the room was not cold, she was lying on a bed of black silk sheets in a chamber that looked like it had been carved from the heart of a mountain. Stone walls, high-arched ceilings, and a single, barred window showing a vista of nothing but snow-capped peaks and an endless, gray sky. A heavy weight was clasped around her neck, a collar, smooth, cold, and crafted from pure silver. It pulsed with a faint, sickening energy that made her wolf feel caged and distant. It suppressed her powers. The heavy oak door swung open, and a man stepped inside. He was tall and regal, with an ageless face that was both handsome and terrifying. His hair was long and the color of spun silver, just like her mother's. His eyes were the brilliant, molten gold from her nightmares. He moved with a silent, predatory grace that made even Knox's alpha presence seem like a pale imitation. His aura was ancient, overwhelming, suffocating. This was the master, her father. "Hello, Luna," he said, his voice the same deep, resonant sound from the helicopter, the same voice that had haunted her dreams. "Who are you?" Scarlett demanded, forcing herself to sit up, to not show the terror that was threatening to paralyze her. "I am Lucian Nightbane," he said, a faint, sad smile on his lips. "And I am your father, your real father." He began to talk, and with every word, the foundations of Scarlett's world crumbled into dust. He spoke of the Lycan primordials, the first werewolves, beings of immense power who had faded into myth. He was one of them, the last of them. He had sought to revive his bloodline, to create a new, perfect race by mixing his blood with that of modern werewolves. The lunar bloodline was his creation, an experiment. "Serafina, the woman you thought was your mother," Lucian said, his golden eyes watching her with a clinical detachment, "was my daughter from a previous generation. She was merely the vessel chosen to carry you. You are not her child. Luna, you are mine, my blood, my direct heir." The room began to spin. Serafina wasn't her mother, but her sister, half-sister, and Nathaniel Silvercrest, the man from the photo. Nathaniel discovered the truth. Lucian continued, his voice cold. "He discovered my plan to awaken the primordial power within you. He was a sentimental fool. He and Serafina tried to run, to hide you from me. They stole you. The massacre wasn't a rogue uprising. It was me, taking back what was mine." "You killed them," Scarlett whispered, the horror of it a physical blow. "They raised me, they loved me, you murdered my family." "I am your family," he thundered, the force of his voice making the very stones vibrate. "Your blood, your power, it all comes from me, with me. You will not be an outcast or a symbol for lesser wolves to worship. You will be a queen. You will help me usher in a new age, an eternal night where our kind will rule. Powered by the moon, you will command." His plan was insane. He wanted her to willingly awaken the primordial part of her bloodline, to become his living battery, his princess in a world built on tyranny and death. "I would rather die than be your pawn," she spat, her own voice shaking with rage. "And my name is Scarlet. Luna died in the fire with the only family she ever knew." His expression hardened. So be it. She was left alone, a prisoner in a castle at the top of the world. She tried to reach for Nox through their mate bond, but the silver collar and the immense distance made the connection weak. A faint, staticky whisper. She could feel his pain, his frantic desperation, but she couldn't send him a clear message. Days later, a familiar, hated face appeared at her door. Marcus Thorne. He brought her a tray of food, his face bearing a fresh set of scars, courtesy of Nox. "You should have just come to me when I cast you out," he sneered. "Would have saved us all a lot of trouble." "You were his dog all along," she said, her voice filled with contempt. "I have served the primordial lord for 30 years, Marcus boasted. "My position at Riverbend was a cover. My task was always to watch you. Diane hid you too well, but I knew you were special. Casting you out was the easiest way to isolate you, to make you vulnerable for when my lord returned." Her capture, her exile, her 5 years of misery, it had all been part of his twisted plan. On the 3rd day, Lucian returned. "You have a choice. Daughter," he said, his voice leaving no room for negotiation. "Join me, embrace your destiny, and I will spare your precious mate and his little pack. Resist me, and I will force the awakening upon you, and then I will wipe Shadowmere from the face of the earth as the first act of my new empire." He left her with the ultimatum. She was trapped, her powers suppressed, her mate a world away. She collapsed onto the bed, tears of helpless rage streaming down her face. She closed her eyes, focusing all her will, all her love, on the faint, flickering thread of her bond with Nox. "I'm sorry," she whispered into the void, hoping he could feel her, hoping he would understand. "I love you. Please forgive me for what I have to do." Nox's world was a landscape of unending agony. The severed feel of the mate bond was a physical wound, a gaping hole in his soul. He could feel Scarlet's terror, her despair, a faint, distant echo that fueled his waking nightmares. For 2 days, he hadn't slept. He had only planned. The survivors of the Lunar Alliance gathered at Shadowmere, a grim and determined war party. Drake and Celeste stood by his side, their warriors ready. Victor Hale was imprisoned in their deepest cells, spitting defiance. "You cannot win against a primordial." He had sneered. "He is a god. You are insects." Their break came from a captured communication device. Jackson's tech team managed to trace the encrypted signal's origin, a remote, uncharted mountain range in Alaska. Magnus, poring over ancient maps, found it, a legend, a myth. Nightbane Castle, the supposed fortress of the last primordial king, a place thought lost to time. "A frontal assault is suicide," Drake said, his voice grim. "We don't know his numbers, and his own power is off the charts." "Then we don't use a frontal assault," Nox replied, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "We use a distraction. Celeste, your pack is the fastest. You'll lead a diversionary force. Draw his main army to the south gate. The rest of us will go in from the north. A small, elite team, we get in, we get Scarlet, and we get out." Before they left, Magnus pressed a small, crystal vial into Nox's hand. It was filled with a liquid that shimmered with an inner light. "Moon water," the elder explained. "Collected from a sacred pool under a blue moon. It can temporarily neutralize the effects of silver and will amplify your alpha strength to its absolute peak. It may give you the few minutes you need." The journey to Alaska was a blur of grim determination. They traveled by plane, then shifted, running for miles through the brutal, frozen landscape as wolves. All the while, Nox pushed against the damaged bond. calling Scarlet's name over and over in his mind. Finally, he felt a faint whisper in return, fragmented, weak. "North Tower, Silver Collar, don't come trap. I'm coming, Scarlet." He projected back with all his might. "Hold on." At Nightbane Castle, Scarlet was playing the most dangerous game of her life. She stood before Lucian in the throne room, her head bowed in false submission. "I will join you," she said, her voice carefully devoid of emotion. "I accept my destiny, but I have one condition. Prove your promise. Let Nox and his pack live. Call off your hunt." Lucian's golden eyes studied her, searching for deceit. "A reasonable request," he said finally, a triumphant smile gracing his lips. "Once your primordial power is awakened and you are fully bound to me, they will no longer be a threat worth my notice. The ritual will take place tonight." The ritual was to be held in a vast circular chamber at the top of the North Tower. An altar of black stone stood in the center. Lucian's plan was to have her drink a chalice of his own blood, which he claimed would forcibly unlock her dormant primordial genes. As they prepared, a roar of battle echoed from the south side of the castle. Celeste's diversion had begun. Under the cover of the chaos, Nox, Jackson, Sienna, and 10 of their best warriors scaled the sheer northern cliffs. They breached the castle, moving like shadows through the stone corridors, following the pull of Nox's bond. They were met by Marcus Thorne and a squad of guards. "I knew you'd come." "Ashford," Marcus sneered. "Jackson, he's yours," Nox commanded, not breaking his stride. Jackson let out a feral grin and launched himself at Marcus. A personal score to settle. The other warriors engaged the guards while Nox and Sienna raced on. Nox burst into the ritual chamber. Scarlet was there, chained to the stone altar. Lucian stood beside her, holding the chalice of blood. "Ah, the mate," Lucian said, his voice dripping with condescending amusement. "Right on time. You see, daughter, I told you he would walk right into my trap." With a gesture from Lucian, a massive stone slab slammed down, sealing the doorway. The chamber was a tomb. Nox and Sienna were trapped. "Now you will watch as your mate dies, and your Luna is reborn." Lucian gloated. Nox didn't waste time with words. He uncorked the vial of moon water and drank it in one gulp. Power, pure and immense, surged through him. He shifted, his alpha wolf form larger, faster, crackling with lunar energy. He launched himself at Lucian. Lucian simply laughed and shifted himself. He became a creature of legend, a colossal wolf twice the size of Nox, with fur of spun gold and eyes that burned like miniature suns. A primordial. The fight was brutally one-sided. Lucian swatted Nox aside like an insect. Nox was thrown against the far wall, his body shifting back to human, bones broken, blood pouring from his mouth. Scarlet screamed, watching the man she loved be effortlessly crushed, the sight of his broken body, the sheer, absolute terror of losing him. It shattered every lock, every cage she had ever put around her own power. A force, ancient and cataclysmic, erupted from the core of her being. With a sound like shattering crystal, the silver collar around her neck exploded into 1,000 pieces. Her chains melted away like ice in a furnace. She rose from the altar, her body enveloped in a blinding aura of silver and gold light. Her eyes were no longer silver. They were a hybrid, silver irises with pupils of burning primordial gold. Lucian's smug expression turned to one of shock and disbelief. He had wanted to awaken her power with his ritual, with his blood. He had never imagined that her love for another could be a stronger catalyst. The power she now wielded was not a gift from him. It was her own. A voice, layered with the power of both Moon Singer and Primordial, echoed through the chamber. It was Scarlet's voice, but it was also something more. "You wanted me to awaken," she said, her voice crackling with raw energy. Fine, but I choose my own family. I choose my own path. She pointed a trembling finger at the golden wolf. You are not my father. You are just the monster who murdered my family. And now, I will finish what they started. The battle that followed was one for the age, a clash of titans, of legacy against legacy. Scarlet, in her fully awakened form, met Lucian's charge head-on. She didn't shift into a wolf. Her power was too immense, too fluid to be contained in a single shape. She was a whirlwind of silver and gold energy, a force of nature personified. She threw her head back and sang to the moon, but this time she manipulated the song. With one note, the moon in the sky outside seemed to wax, empowering Nox and her allies. With another, it waned, causing Lucian's warriors below to falter in confusion. Lucian, enraged that his own creation was being used against him, unleashed his own primordial power. He commanded the shadows in the chamber, making them spring to life. Tendrils of living darkness shot towards Scarlet, attempting to smother her light, to cut her off from the moon. On the floor, Jackson and the others helped Nox to his feet. He was still badly injured, but his mate's power was flowing into him, mending his broken bones, fueling his resolve. He saw Scarlet being overwhelmed by the living shadows and knew what he had to do. He stumbled to her side, grabbing her hand. I'm with you, he gasped. We're with you. He closed his eyes and opened their mate bond completely, not just to his own strength, but to the strength of every Shadowmere wolf fighting below, to Celeste, to Drake, to all their allies. He became a conduit, channeling their collective will, their loyalty, their love, directly into Scarlet. A brilliant white light erupted from their joined hands, incinerating the shadows. Scarlet looked at Nox, her eyes filled with love and gratitude. I'm not alone, she whispered. That's what you'll never understand. Lucian, true power isn't about dominance. It's about connection. With the strength of her mate and her pack surging through her, she unlocked the final, most ancient power slumbering in her blood, the power of Eclipse Command. She lifted her hands to the sky. Outside the castle, the moon began to move, sliding in front of the distant, unseen sun, creating an impossible, unnatural lunar eclipse. The sky turned a deep, twilight purple. In werewolf lore, a lunar eclipse was the moment when primordials were at the absolute peak of their power, but also, for a fleeting moment, when the source of their power was laid bare and vulnerable. Lucian roared in triumph, feeling the surge of energy, but it was a trap. Scarlet began her final song. It was not a song of strengthening or silencing. It was a song of purification. It targeted the corrupted core of Lucian's millennia-old power, the hatred and ambition that had twisted him into a monster. The pure, silver notes stripped away his dark energy. His golden wolf form wavered and collapsed, leaving him, in his human form, weakened, ancient, and for the first time in 3,000 years, mortal. He stared at her, his golden eyes wide with disbelief. Kill me, he hissed. Finish it. Prove you are my daughter. Scarlet lowered her hands, the eclipse receding, the normal night sky returning. No, she said, her voice her own again, though filled with a new, quiet authority. I won't become a killer like you. She raised her hands one last time. Shards of crystal, formed from the frozen air itself, rose from the floor. They surrounded Lucian, encasing him, not harming him, but imprisoning him. He was sealed in a coffin of crystal, his eyes open but unseeing, trapped in an eternal, dreamless sleep. You will never hurt anyone again, she whispered. The battle was over. Jackson had defeated Marcus, who was taken alive. Sienna had broken the seal on the chamber and led their forces to aid Celeste, routing Lucian's now leaderless army. Nightbane Castle, a monument to ancient tyranny, was theirs. The cost had been immense. as the last of her primordial power receded, leaving only the familiar hum of the moon singer. Scarlet's strength gave out. She collapsed, falling into Nox's waiting, healing arms, and for 3 days she did not wake. 6 months later, Scarlet stood on a platform in the rebuilt Silver Grove, a sacred place they had finally located, deep in the heart of Shadowmere territory. She was no longer just Scarlet the Outcast or Luna the Heir. She was the co-leader of the expanded Lunar Alliance, which now boasted 15 packs, all dedicated to a new era of peace and cooperation. The world was changing. Instead of being feared, Scarlet was a symbol of hope. She had initiated the Lunar Wildlife Sanctuary, using her ability to communicate with animals to help restore ecological balance to the pack's territories. The werewolves were becoming guardians of nature, not just its predators. It was a legacy of connection, not conquest. Her friends had found their own paths. Jackson was now the supreme beta of the entire alliance, his diplomatic skills proving as sharp as his claws. He and Sienna had, finally, after years of circling each other, admitted their feelings, and their steadfast bond was an inspiration to the pack. Celeste and Drake were her and Nox's most trusted advisors and dearest friends. And Magnus, his duty fulfilled, had retired to write the true history of their people, ensuring the sacrifices of the past would never be forgotten. Today, under the light of a full moon, surrounded by their family and allies, Scarlet and Nox were having their true mating ceremony, a wedding. Nox stood opposite her, his amber eyes glowing with a love so profound it made her heart ache. "Scarlet Winter, Luna Silvercrest," he said, his voice thick with emotion as he recited his vows. "Whatever name you choose, you are my home, my mate, my everything. I vow to stand beside you, to love you in light and shadow, until my last breath and beyond." Tears streamed down Scarlet's face as she gave her own vows. "Nox Ashford, you saw me when I was invisible. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. You are my anchor, my strength, my heart. I choose you, every day, in every life, forever." Magnus, officiating the ceremony, raised his hands. "By the moon and stars, by the bond that cannot break, I pronounce you true mates for eternity." A week later, Scarlet wasn't feeling well, a persistent fatigue, a strange sensitivity to smells. Dr. Evelyn's examination was short, her smile radiant. "Luna," the doctor said, her voice filled with joy, "you're pregnant." The news sent a shockwave of delight through the pack. Nox, the calm, unshakable alpha, transformed into an endearingly nervous father-to-be, fluffing her pillows and insisting she not lift anything heavier than a book. One night, they sat on their balcony, his hand resting gently on her still, flat stomach. "Can you feel it?" she whispered. "Through the bond." Nox closed his eyes, a look of intense concentration on his face. A slow, wondrous smile spread across his lips. "Yeah, I can. I feel her. She's strong, like her mother." Her Scarlet asked, surprised. "Alpha instinct," he said with a grin. "If it's a girl, I want to name her Seraphina, after the woman who gave her life to save you." "And if it's a boy," she asked, her heart full. "Nathaniel," he answered without hesitation, "after the man who was a father to you when it mattered most." As she fell asleep in his arms that night, she had a vision, not a nightmare, but a glimpse of a sun-drenched future. A little girl with her fiery hair and Nox's amber-flecked silver eyes, laughing as she played with a litter of wolf pups in the Silver Grove. The girl began to hum a tune, a new moon song, one filled not with pain or desperation, but with pure, unadulterated joy. 4 months later, their daughter was born. They named her Seraphina Ashford, Sarah for short. She had coppery red hair with natural silver highlights and a tiny birthmark on her neck shaped like a perfect full moon. Magnus came to give the child his blessing. As he held her, a beam of moonlight shone through the window, illuminating her. The baby didn't cry. She giggled, and her eyes, for a fleeting moment, glowed with an alpha's gold. The old wolf's eyes widened with tears of awe. She is an alpha moon singer, he breathed, the first in our history. A leader born with the song of the moon in her soul. She will be greater than all of us. Later, Scarlet held Sarah. Nox's arms wrapped around them both, outside. The howls of the Shadowmere pack rose in a joyous chorus, welcoming the birth of their new Luna. "Welcome to the world, little one," Scarlet whispered, kissing her daughter's forehead. "Your life will not be about power or prophecy. It will be about love and family and the choices you make." Nox rested his chin on Scarlet's shoulder, his gaze fixed on their child. "You are our moon and our stars, Sarah," he murmured, "our perfect little miracle." Scarlet looked out at the peaceful valley, her heart finally whole. She had been born under a blood moon, a curse upon her name. She had lost everything. But in the darkness, she had found a love that defied fate, a family that was forged in loyalty, and a strength she never knew she possessed. The lunar legacy wasn't just hers to carry anymore. It was theirs to build, together. This was not an ending. It was just the beginning.